Bé, bona tarda a tothom. Dues paraules només, en nom com a degà del Col·legi d'Enginyers Industrials de Catalunya, a donar-los a tots la benvinguda en aquesta sala de la seu del Col·legi que porta el nom il·lustre de Pompeu Fabra, la persona que ens va normalitzar la llengua i que permet que tinguem una llengua avui normal, d'una certa normalitat dintre del que naturalment ens és permès de tenir en el marc de l'estat en el qual estem vivint. Let me a few words only to welcome all of you to this meeting in this roundtable about the responsible research and innovation in the frame of the European Union. I hope that our association, R+D+4i, is an association who has worked stark with many regions in Europe, and that is improving each year his cooperation for the best innovation in our territory. I hope that the roundtable will be interesting for all of us, and I wish you only positive success. For us, for the Association of Industrial Engineers in Catalonia, is an old association. This year we are celebrating the 150th anniversary. That means that it's a very old association, and we are always trying to do the best for our industry, for our economy. I wish you, I repeat, big success in this roundtable, and thank you very much to attend our roundtable here in Barcelona.
Molt bé, doncs bona tarda a tothom. Anem a començar aquesta taula rodona. Thank you very much for coming here for the roundtable. As you know, the European Commission, particularly the Research General Direction, it's looking for more responsible research and innovation. That means that the work that are doing the researchers be better understood by the society. This is one main topic at that moment by the European Commission, and they have subdivided this issue in 6 main issues. Governance of research and innovation. This is one. Engaging society. Gender, access to scientific information, science education, and ethics. Unfortunately, today we have had problems with our friends from Flanders that could not attend the meeting, and unfortunately we have had as well problems with North-Rhine-Westphalia, because the person that has agreed to come, yesterday he was injured in an accident and unfortunately could not come. Then the idea was to subdivide the different topics that I mentioned, these 6 topics, by different speakers, but unfortunately we could talk about gender and engaging society, and in that case we would like to ask Mr. von Rodona, that today is our keynote speaker, that in his speech took a little bit about these 2 topics as well. Mr. von Rodona, the floor is yours.
Okay. Gracias, Joan. Thank you for the invitation and for being part of this table. It's always a pleasure to come here to this Association of Engineers. I'm the first one to speak, and I have to, I think my role was, because now they changed it, but my role was to give like a general overview of this topic that is quite particular, the research, the responsible research and innovation. Being in a business, in association of engineers, I'm going to start using etymology and using the approach of the people that plays with words. Because innovation comes from innovare. Innovation, it's a kind of word that is very well used these days in the business context, in the professional context. And we can say that innovation coming from innovare means something like bringing in some novelty. When you innovate, you bring some novelty into the things you are doing. And we can ask ourselves, what kind of novelty do we bring into the world? There are different ways of bringing novelties into the world. The first way, I think, is that we introduce some novelty when we look at things differently. Innovation starts by looking at things differently. Sometimes when you have things and you organize them differently, suddenly different ideas appear, different ways of understanding things appear. Things are there, but not all the things are perceived in the same way by the different people. And this is something very common, no? When you face the same situation, or you face the same problem, depending on who you are, depending on the things you want to take into account, depending on the values and the things that are important for you, you approach this same problem with different lenses and with different points of view, depending, as I said, who you are. Also, we introduce some novelty simply by being there. Human beings are a special being in this world, because when a human being is part of the story changes. We say philosophy, in the theory of action, that there are no human actions or there are no human problems that are repeated. Every human problem is different, because every day is different. Because you don't face the same problem twice. You cannot if this is a real human problem, you cannot only say that this problem is a part of a general problem that can be treated in a general manner. Because each one of us are not only individuals of a general problem. Each one of us are different, and every day is different. And today has been a very different day for the supporters of Barca if the Barca won yesterday or lost. The day will be different. And probably some of our actions have been different. So only with our presence, no human, means that we make the world different. And we introduce some novelty just because the way we are. And then, of course, we introduce some novelty with the things we make. The world is, so to say, open. Is open to our actions and how we transform it. Being in the Association of Engineers, this seems quite clear. No? You transform things. You build houses, bridges, tunnels, buildings. You transform the reality. And you introduce some innovation and some novelty in this world. How all these things have to do with ethics? Or so on the other side, no? How ethics have to do with all these things that I'm telling you, no? Well, in my point of view, ethics, in a certain way, introduces or help us to look at things differently. I said, to look at things differently, ourselves and our actions. We look at things differently. Ethics helps us to look at things differently. Ethics is a kind of lens that allows you to see the same situation through a very different way of looking at problems. You can look at the economical crisis that we have these days, no? The crisis that we have. You can look at the crisis only from a pure economic point of view. But you can look at the crisis that we are facing these days and suffering these days very differently if you introduce the ethical aspect of the problem, of the situation. And if you look at the problem in terms of people suffering, rights, duties, responsibilities, values, priorities, people involved. 6 million of people, each one of them different, that are suffering because they are unemployed. It's not just a number, it's people suffering. So when you introduce ethics, you look at things differently. And ethics help us to look at things differently. Ethics introduces in our way of looking at things some kind of novelty. And we cannot forget about that. Also because, as I said, with our own presence, being there, there is no human action that is the same. We introduce some novelty by being part of the reality. Ethics help us to understand that through our own actions, we become the kind of people we are. That we have the opportunity of not just changing the world, but changing ourselves. And this is the huge, this is very important in terms of innovation, in terms of novelty. I introduce some novelty in the world because depending on my actions, I become the kind of person I'm becoming. Even doing research, I am becoming the kind of person through my work on doing research, for example. And also because in this transformation of the reality that I mentioned before, we can do it in a very respectful manner. We can do it taking care of the environment, of the reality. We can transform the world with a sense of a stewardship, or we can transform the world in a way that I can say that is maybe more despotic, no? Without taking care of the reality, without caring about how the reality deserves to be treated and wants to be treated. In this sense, ecology is a very ethical dimension of the reality because you cannot treat the reality as you wish. The reality has some constraints that makes you to be careful how you treat the nature. And also, by the way, the human nature. Because sometimes we tend to respect more the non-human nature than the human nature. And in the same way that we respect the non-human nature, we have to respect the human nature. Human beings cannot be treated as we wish, but as they deserve. And that this makes a lot of difference. No? As Joan was saying before, responsible research and innovation. No? We can ask, no? What does responsible add to research and innovation? Why we need to put the word responsible in front of research and innovation? You can say, we just do research. There's nothing to do there with ethics, with responsible. No? Well, when we introduce some novelty in the research and innovation, when you introduce the lens of ethics in research and innovation, you discover that you have on one side research and innovation, technologies, no? Science and technology there, but Also, you discover that there are some societal needs, some moral or ethical values, and all these three dimensions have to play together, have to go together. And sometimes you realize that these three balls, so to say, don't go together. In the literature and in different brochures I managed and text, I managed to give some ideas for this presentation, to get some ideas for this presentation. You realize that sometimes, no, with the research innovation, social needs, ethical values, sometimes you find that they don't go, they are not aligned. They don't go together. You have, for example, situations where there are real innovations that are successful in terms of social needs. Things that science, technology produced that really help to solve some social needs. Which means that when you take ethics into account, when you are concerned about the social needs, the ethical values, they are not barriers for research. Sometimes we tend to think that ethics is a kind of barrier. Don't do this, don't do that, don't say that. I mean, ethics is not just a list of things that are forbidden. People that work on ethics, we don't like just to say, no, don't do that, don't do that. What we like to say is, you can do more. You can take more into account these things. You can go further in your in how you help to improve the society, and how you help to improve yourself or the people that is with you. So you realize with the successful innovations that sometimes ethics or social responsibility of the companies are a driver for research and innovation. Sometimes when you have the sensibility towards certain social needs, towards certain ethical values, this provokes, this spares your sense of innovation, because you realize that there are certain needs that need to be covered, and you want to put the effort to help those people that are on those needs. Ethics is a driver for innovation. There are also situations where there is, for example, all the things on sustainable construction, recycling technologies, or renewable energies. Those are examples of successful innovations that come to solve some social needs. We also have some not so successful situations, some contested innovations. Innovations that they are developed, and once they are offered to society, society reacts against it. And you say, come on, I developed it for you. And they say, but we don't want them. And we can learn more from the failures than from the successful sometimes. How is it possible that I develop something and then society is against that? Well, because you didn't take into account some of the things, like the social values or the moral values or the ethical values. Sometimes people, they just don't like them. They just don't feel comfortable with these innovations that you want to produce for them. For example, the nuclear energy, or the genetic modified foods, or the problems and the conflicts with the stem cell research, or biotechnology, or problems with the social networks and these things that are developing those days. Why society reacts? Well, because society look at the things differently. They don't just look at the things as if they are technically possible, but how they affect me and my life and my values and my principles. And then society says, I don't want them. What can we learn from that? We can learn from that it's better to take into account those issues before you start. Because if you were aware, when you just start developing those innovations, those products, those services, that they wouldn't be accepted easily for society, then you will think if it makes sense to keep working on that or not. And if you think that it makes sense to keep working on that, then you will imagine how you sell these things better, no? How you convince society that these things are good. No? They call, there is a principle, no? A paradox, because in this world of research and innovation, sometimes when you are at the beginning of the process of developing some novelty, it's difficult to foresee the future impacts of these technologies. But once these technologies are developed, then the costs incurred for those technologies when they are not accepted is bigger than at the beginning. So better stop at the beginning, but at the beginning you don't have all the information for it. And also there are a third element of not alignment is when you have some what they are called unattended fields, unattended issues. When society has certain needs that are not attended by the research community or the business community because they are not economically efficient enough, or normally it's because of economical issues. No? There are a lot of areas where there is a social need and it seems that no one is paying attention to that. No? The poverty, the base of the pyramid, the rare diseases, social cohesion, areas where we need a lot of things to do, but no one wants to start because it doesn't make sense in terms of economic profit, maybe. So, what can we learn from this? Well, that there is a way of, we have to find a ways of promoting those areas. No? Sometimes it's through the market. There is a lot of things going on the business of the pyramid in terms of, look, there is also some way of doing things that make economical sense dealing with these issues that are there left. No? Sometimes with regulation is when the legislators appear and they say, I'm sorry, but you have to do that. And if I don't put a regulation, you are not going to do it because. Or through education and really trying to understand how important are these things. I think I'm going to, I'm taking too much time. I don't know when I started or if I shall finish, just let me know, Joan, okay? Because I don't want to, you say, this guy is talking a lot and I have 4 more people there waiting. My goodness, when are we finishing? Let me just say a couple more of things very quickly. At the bottom of all these questions, I think that there are 2 kind of conflicts that need to be taken into account. Because we have science, we have ethics, and we have economics. And we need to put all these things together. No? Things that economically make sense, that scientifically and technologically are possible, and ethically are acceptable. And when we have these 3 balls that we need to put together, we can have some conflicts. At least I can see 2 conflicts from the science point of view. No? Conflicts between science and technology and ethics, and conflicts between science and economics. And I'm going to spend a couple of minutes in each one of them, and I'll finish, I promise. Science and technology conflicts with ethics. Why? Because they are related. Science and ethics, technology and ethics are related. They cannot be substituted one by other. And sometimes we tend to substitute ethics by science or technology. And this is a huge problem, or this can put us in trouble. When we say, I mean, this is technically possible, but we cannot confuse something that is technically possible with something that is ethically acceptable. Okay, it's technically possible. Now let's look and see if it's acceptable from the point of view of ethics. I know that is technically acceptable or technically possible, but this doesn't solve the question about morality. Those people that tend to think that everything that is technically possible should be made, they commit the error of confusing science and technology and progress, technological progress, with ethical analysis. Since this is possible, now let's consider if it makes sense or not to do it from the ethical point of view. And sometimes you should recognize or accept that things that are technically possible, it's better from the ethical point of view not to do them. And to accept that something that is technically possible, it's better not to do it, requires a huge humility from the point of view of those persons that are ready to do it. I can introduce into the small part of life and see how it is and to reach the God's particle. Maybe it's better not to look at that. I can, in a laboratory, make all kind of combinations and create human life. Maybe it's better not to do it. Maybe there are things that are better not to look at them, not to do them. So no confusing what is technically possible with what is ethically possible. Because they are in different levels. One is the level of science that provides a lot of data, possibilities, but the ethical analysis that provides principles for actions is a different level. And the other conflict, I said, is between science and technology and economics. Why? Because science looks at truth, evidences, inquiries, scientifically inquiries, try to understand how things are. And economics look at efficiency, money, incentives. And sometimes they don't go in the same direction. There is a philosopher, an American professor, that has called this preposterism, Susan Hack. Preposterism. No? You are preposterous when you don't have as your intention of your research activity just to inquiry and try to understand better the reality, but you have other hidden intentions. You are not interested in discovering how things are and work, but you are interested in promotions or in being your paper and your work published and gain a reputation of a very good scientist. And when you are more interested on that on the real and the validity of your research, then you are in trouble. Those of us that are in the academia know very well this problem. No? When sometimes you feel the pressure of publish or perish. No? When you feel the tension between something, a research that is rigorous or a research that is relevant. And all of us have experienced how we read papers and papers and papers of journals, full of rigor with no relevance. With a lot of statistical analysis, but with no relevance at all. But it's the way of promoting, publishing papers in journals that no one reads, no one understands, and no one knows why are you publishing this or saying that. So this is kind of conflict between all these three levels would make, I think, important this idea of responsible research and innovation. And I'm going to stop because I took too much time. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for your attention. I didn't cover the two issues that Joan mentioned, but was too much already. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Fonrodona. I forget to tell you that Mr. Fonrodona is professor and head of Business Ethics Department in IESE Business School. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, now it's the turn of Mr. Mark Balax that will talk basically about ethics. Mr. Balax, I kindly ask you, all the speakers, not to spend more than 10 minutes if possible.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias, Juan. I'm Marc Valax. I'm from the University of Lyon in France, and I will just explain what are the main attitudes toward business ethics in French SMEs and large companies. What's going on with empresas gabachas, such as with Leroy Merlin, Danone, Total, Boiron, Air France, Sanofi, but as well French SMEs, world leaders that we do have. So I will just go straight away to the main action we had. We conducted 20 cases research, a qualitative one, and what we want to focus is just what's going on, what are the main changes within these companies. Mafiosas, and they become more and more on values, ethics, and business ethics. So I've been conducting that in my department with PhD students, and I will just show you what's going on regarding these different aspects. So first, we have to talk about the theoretical framework, as you did. Ethics is really a driver for business and innovation. So we just selected the three main authors, Elwigel, Smith, and Rothoff, that are focused on moral principles. The second one is much more focused on values. What do they think and how could they act? And also is really focused on corporate social responsibility. Because as far as we talk about business ethics, we must consider people, profit, and planet. So in order to go further, what we did select is, in reality, business ethics, we need to consider three factors. First factor, money and profits. It's called resources and capabilities. What's going on? Do they have enough money in order to support such an action? Then we have a second way. It will be to be focused on founder and manager characteristics. What do they think? How do they act? And what is really the background do they have? Do they think on philosophy or not? Or they are only focused on profit and planet? The other aspect is attitude toward process. Do they accept to go on the long run? Or do they prefer to get a result straight away and they don't want to wait a long time? Or are they really oriented on charity? Because we do have some companies that are mainly oriented on that, on charity. For some of them it's only a window screen, for other ones it's a reality. So, what is exactly the scope of business ethics? And then I will show you the results. In reality, we did make this research considering these different factors. First factors, how do they interact with customers, suppliers, distributors, and competitors? Are they really oriented on that? Second aspect, it's in human resources management. It's good to treat well customers, but it's good to treat as well employees within the company, especially when you are within a worldwide basis. Third aspect, it's regarding stakeholders. What's going on regarding government, local communities, interest groups, and other aspects like that. Fourth one, especially with Total, I've been working on this aspect of natural environment, pollution, recycling, sustainability, and the last one, international business. What do they need to do when they work with Venezuela, Peru, Cuba, and other countries where time to time it's quite hard to get a business in these different countries? So, I go straight away to the results, and I will show you regarding 20 cases, only 4 of them, in order to respect the 10 minutes. So, first aspect, it's a French company called Société-Champs. They did accept to talk to me about tax evasion, so they don't pay all the impuestos. And what they do well is, time to time, they change from tax evasion I asked them, why do you do that? And they explained to me that they have a utilitarian view of ethics. They don't want to spend a lot of money to the different aspects of the government, and they prefer to give the money back to the employees. So they said it's a kind of ethics. It's not really ethics, it's a kind of ethics. So they don't want to pay everything, but they prefer to pay only the employees. And as you could see, it's the verbatim of the entrepreneur, the greatest good for the greatest number, especially employees. So the thing is, tax evasion, they did it a long time. Now they're on the way on changing. This company is a world leader. They make carpets for people in order to go to at the seaside, but they make as well huge carpets for helicopters. So they have a specific product and they go on that. So regarding tax evasion, we could say it's not really ethics, but they are on the better way. That's why I could say that Educa-tion is making progress. Second one is Odule. This company makes plastics and is it's a business-to-business company. It's located in France as well. This company exports in India, China, Bangladesh, Peru, Venezuela, and Angola. I think they selected the worst or the most difficult countries in order to make business on international trade. And what had happened, they were obliged to give gifts to purchasing agents, so conseguir por la izquierda is called, in order to get it. And finally, what's going on, they have been on a way that they did accept to talk to us about this aspect, and they are on better ways now, because they accept to give less gifts and not to be so mafioso, and to go in a better way, and they are more profitable. As far as they avoid to be unethics, they became more profitable with India, China, Bangladesh, Peru, Venezuela, and Angola, because as far as you give money in order to get the market, finally you lose market share. So these are two small companies that were on a way of ethics. The first one was really on an utilitarian view of ethics. The second one is more focused on hope, saying that the situation is getting better, even in India, in order to get the market. Third one will be a huge French one. Maybe you know the product. It's called Boiron. This company makes homeopathics. It's a world leader. They have 2,800 employees. And what they do is enchauffer in order to get the job. So favoritism regarding the different aspects, and I had a long talk with the director of the company, and he was just explaining that favoritism by promoting a friend instead of a better qualified person was mainly a practice in human resources management. They changed their mind, and they are now much more focused on another aspect, that is ethics. And they said by being focused not on favoritism, they discover another way in order to be more respectful with human resources management. So in reality, as far as they were focused on favoritism, the situation was unclear within the company regarding competition and regarding human resources policy, and now the situation is really getting better as far as they accept to be on an intelligent self-interest. Not only the interest of a small community, but the global community. Fourth, I'm still on time, yeah? Fourth, okay, I finished with that. Fourth community, you know it, Total. Total, in order to go on different countries, they have been obliged to be a kind of mafioso, regarding especially pollution. So they've been on a way that they made a huge code of conduct in order to be better regarding pollution. So by the end, the situation is getting better regarding Total, and we could say that ethics, responsible research and innovation in Europe and far away could be really better in order to go on better shape. If I do a cross-case analysis, putting all together the 20 cases, we could see that the most important is to give the relevant information, to give a name on the aspect. When someone call it palanca or enchufe, you must tell him it's unfair, it's not really ethics. When they say, in Total, when you say it's mafioso, if they have to accept the word, step by step they are getting better in order to go in a better shape. Then the most important is to go with profit, planet, people, in order to go on a welfare community. Recommendation, what is the most important, and I should finish with that, is first aspect, ethical awareness. As far as you are in a small business company, the entrepreneur must accept the situation. Second, you must design a code of ethics in order just to check what's going on, and you need to put indicators. Indicators are really important in order to go further with these different aspects. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah.
Thank you very much for keeping on time. Now is the turn of Mr. Lanfranco Sen, Professor, University of Bocconi in Milan, and Director for the Center of Research on Regional Economics, Transport and Tourism. Mr. Sen, please.
Thank you very much. All has been said by my two colleagues, so I don't know what I will be able to add. I'll try to move on the question how you deal with these problems. How do you deal with responsible research and innovation? I think that the effort of the European Union in this direction is a great challenge, because to govern the government or the governance, as I will say in a minute, of these phenomena are quite complicated to deal with. I give some hints along these lines to avoid speaking 25 to 28 minutes, because I try to be responsible. I think that in general, the word responsible means has a etymological source, which is the word respondeo in Latin, which means respond to a need. So I think that doing research, innovative research in a responsible way, means to take into account demand. In fact, in his introduction, Professor Fontrodona and Mark Valax stressed the fact that you have to deal with suppliers, with clients, with employees, that is, other people with respect to those which are usually taken into account in a supply-oriented setting. In fact, the Responsible Research and Innovation Program is something which has to do more and more with demand, with the implicit or explicit demand that is the societal needs. Not always societal needs are explicit. Sometimes you have to interpret or forecast or foresee what the needs will become in time, in the future. So, but I think that the governance problem is that here you have to not only deal with economic issues, with the returns of doing some investment in research, but also on the impact that you provide on society. It has been said again that people is not interested so much in the production of innovation, but on the impact of innovation. This means that those authorities or those bodies, public bodies, that at the different territorial scale, from the European Union to the local government, are charged of responsible, of promoting, enhancing responsible research and innovation, have to bring together the production side, the supply side, and the demand side, because otherwise they take into consideration only one side of the reality. In other words, there might be some forms of implementing research, doing research, which might take the form of public-private partnerships, which might take the form of non-profit organization, because these have the power or have the opportunity to integrate in the design of the research policies already the supply and the demand side at the same time. This means a view on collaboration and cooperation. And this is probably one of the most challenging aspects of a responsible research and innovation policy, because where do you base, or when can you be sure that you are building the premises for collaboration or cooperation? When essentially you develop trust in each other, trust in people who share a project, or producers and the beneficiaries of research projects. But trust is not something that is only a necessary and not sufficient condition. Then you have to govern or to promote, and I speak of promotion as a first step of government and of governance. Governance is the sufficient condition for collaboration. You have to bring people together. You have to bring the different stakeholders together to collaborate, either horizontally, in the sense that you do cooperate on same projects, or you cooperate to provide positive impact research and activities. The third point, which is a corollary probably of this aspect of collaboration and cooperation, has another implication for the governance, and it has to do with the process of a responsible research and innovation. In fact, there are at least 3 stages in which a responsible activity, such activity is carried out. The design of a policy, the implementation, that is the management of a policy, of a research policy, and the evaluation of the effects. The governance issue implies that you have to create collaboration and interaction between supply and demand at all these 3 phases: design, implementation, and evaluation. And think of how much is difficult to bring together people who have different functions or have different languages. To solve problems, especially complex problems such as the research policies that have been exemplified before, the environmental problems, the projects, the biotechnical or biotechnological issues, the energy saving issues, because the environment is precious to everybody. Think of how many stakeholders must participate to this collaborative project. What languages? I am an economist. You are mostly engineers. I have to do very often in my research activities with planners. One of the main difficulty that I find is to understand the language, the concepts, which are totally different. How can you design a responsible research policy if you do not understand the language, the technical, scientific, even ethic language of the partner? And the third aspect of responsible research and innovation has to do with the evaluation. In fact, the document which is at the basis of this program of the European Union tackles the problem of evaluation, because to be sure that you are doing responsible research and you are innovating in doing innovation at a responsible level, you should prove, demonstrate that responsible research and innovation projects are more effective. I totally agree with the definition that has been given earlier, saying that to act ethically and not only technically is more convenient in doing research and taking the follow-up of research. But you have to convince people of this, because the ethical point of view is something which is very personal. And it may occur that one firm, one manager, one entrepreneur is ethical and or act ethically, and the other is not. And you cannot, it has been again stressed, you cannot compel people to be moral or ethical or ethically oriented. So you have to prove that it's convenient. It's convenient, it's more efficient or effective to join or combine ethics with in carrying out the activities of every day. So in this sense, a good program of responsible research and innovative and of innovation has to take into consideration the design of research policy, and sometimes this does not occur. Research design are even thought of in some environments, universities, public bodies, research centers, without taking into account. I'm finished. Taking into account what are you researching for, or whom are you researching for. The second is the management, and that is especially the governance of these processes, and third is the evaluation phase. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Sen. Professor Sen is as well the president of our association. Now is the turn of Mr. Klaus Lindegaard, professor in Leadership and Strategy Department from the University of Southern Denmark, that will talk about science education.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm happy to be to find out here at the table that we seems to be so much in agreement. I don't know how you feel that from the audience point of view, but maybe you disagree completely. We will hopefully have time to learn. I'm an economist working with innovation, and we use the old definition from a famous Austrian economist from 1912, Joseph Schumpeter, who defines innovation as creating something new and selling it on the market. It's not just having a new idea, we have lots of ideas, but it's actually making an idea for something new in an economic sense come true, or giving it value. And innovation can be new products and services, new technologies and processes, new organizational forms, or it can be new markets in the classical terminology. Since then, another important researcher on innovation and innovation policy, Chris Freeman from SPRU, Sussex University in United Kingdom, in his famous book, at least in Denmark, Economics of Hope, some years ago, he introduced a little twist on this definition, because the Schumpeterian definition is by itself saying that all innovation is good, because innovation is something which is brought to the market and it fulfills somebody's needs, so it must be good, so we should not question innovation at all. All innovation is good, so in that way it's very nice to work with innovation. It's a very good thing, a good mission. But Chris Freeman, he kind of added something to it, because I think you touched upon it also, that we have the realm of what is scientifically conceivable is very large. We can think of curing many diseases, traveling out in space, and many other things is scientifically conceivable. What is technically possible is another matter. That is a far smaller realm. And of course, what is technically possible is what selects among all the things that is scientifically conceivable. We have another realm of selection narrowing down what comes true, and that is that it also has to be economically profitable. Only what is profitable is, of course, put into the real world. And then Freeman adds his last realm and say it also needs to be socially acceptable. And that is the ethical things we have been introduced to here, ethical considerations. So not all that is economically profitable is socially acceptable, and that is kind of the dilemma we are in. How do we make a fit between what we want and accept and what we can what can pay and motivate us to realize? We have the debate in Denmark very much in policy, innovation policy, industrial policy. Business policy is a modern word, because some parts of society wants that innovation policy and research policy should be steered or managed according to needs to solve problems in society. But other parts of society says that this is picking the winner's strategy for business development, and public officials and politicians should not pick the winners. The market will itself pick the winners, so there should be no interference in that. And it's really a kind of dilemma, because we all know a lot of things where we should put our efforts in research across disciplines and in innovation and business development, and it certainly would fulfill some important needs and solve problems for people. But how can we do it without giving public support, political support to winner sectors or winner companies, and in that way destroy free competition and destroy the whole idea of the European single market, where each nation don't support its own industries to solve its own problems. We all of us in the European Union have signed that we will not anymore have the old type of industrial policy where we give public support to specific sectors or industries, because that is, it starts a process of nations competing instead of it is economic actors in the sectors competing, and we don't want that in this century as we had 2 times in the last century. But it's really a dilemma. How do we pick the winners without making them win, or how can we say it? I will return to that maybe a little in the end. And I know now I used all my time on that. I was asked a little about here for the presentation, what is the awareness about science education, and I would talk a little about responsibility, about productivity and competitiveness, and ask you, everybody, the question which also the former speaker, Mr. Sen, asked, how do we institute responsible research and innovation among multiple partners? In the R+D+4i organization is stated in a programmatic document this gap between our scientific development and our cultural development, and I think it's in all its simplicity a very important statement that is giving here. We are culturally, in a wide sense, lacking behind what is scientifically possible. And it's maybe another way to explain or to illustrate this Christopher Freeman selection mechanism controversy, that not only what is economically profitable is socially acceptable. We have a picking the winner strategy in Denmark and other European countries, and in the European Union we have a strategic programming of public research. We have the premise that public research is a free good for everybody, so we are not by promoting knowledge creation and research and making it open for everybody to apply, we are not picking any winners. And we can see the EU 2020 and EU Innovation Union and so on as, I think, very responsible strategies or programs for the future, helping the future of the European Union. In the private sector, it is more another matter, maybe, and I will return to that. But the clue is here to have, if you want to have other values put into your innovation and research and development activities, then you need to open your innovation process for other actors who carry these values. If we look at Eurostat, it's not for you to see the figures, but just to show you that there are national level statistics on doctoral students in science and technology fields, and they are growing all along the line in this 10-year period here, and there are also some diversity. For example, Finland has almost double as many doctoral students as Denmark, although Finnish economy and Danish economy is in many ways comparable if we take income level, for example. But science and research education is not the only thing that can explain high income levels and success. There must be other explanation. It's not so simple, input-output. The more scientists you make, you richer you get. That's not so simple. If we take also Eurostat's definition of research and development employees as percentage of labor force, we also see across all European countries diversity, with Turkey in the bottom and the Scandinavian countries, Northern European countries in the top. But again here there is a kind of funny dilemma that the difference are not so big. If we compare Spain, for example, with 40% and Denmark 50%, it's not so big a difference to explain the higher differences in income. What is really a challenge for the European Union locomotive economic regions, or the strong growth regions, growth areas in European Union, like for example the Catalonia area here in Spain, is a challenge about center periphery. I think that this growth pole vision, that the locomotive regions, if we can make them more strong, as is in the strive for global competitiveness, then automatically it will raise or draw the whole nation, or the rural or the peripheral areas with them. And that's not what we see in Denmark. On the contrary, we see a greater and greater disparity and imbalance between urban center areas and the peripheral and rural areas, where people are leaving the peripheral areas, leaving the old part of the population behind, putting big pressure on how to finance welfare services and so on. I think we see a little the same development all over Europe. And I think that's a challenge for responsible research and innovation, how to bridge or embrace the whole nation or the areas outside of the dynamic centers. Yeah. In Denmark, we have, like everybody, economically problems, and we have a productivity gap. And that is also a common problem in the whole European Union. We made a commission in Denmark who just 2 weeks ago published their first report with some interesting figures for you. So although they are in Danish, you can easily see that if we say that the labor productivity, how much value is created per hour of labor in the economy total. If we take United States as the benchmark, it is 100 every year. Then how is the gray one, Western Europe, and the yellow one is Denmark doing compared to United States in labor productivity? And we have been lacking behind back in the 1960s and 70s. We've been catching up, and now we are falling behind again. And that's why there's a high interest in Denmark. Then how can we, what should we do? And it's a little the same problem for the whole European Union. If we want to create innovation union and be global competitive, then we must solve this competitive problem.
1 minute, please.
1 minute, yes. part of the the productivity paradox is also, as we can see in all countries, that the fewer industrially employed, the higher income level. The more service economy, the higher income level. So value is not created in the manufacturing sector anymore. One of the things that we look at in Denmark is education as an explanation and as something to do, we can do something about. On the left side you have the share of 24 to 39 years who have a secondary education, and you can see Denmark is completely in the bottom of the European countries and the United States. And on the second, how many gets a tertiary or higher education, Denmark is also lying very low compared with many other countries. So that is something we want to focus on, education for closing the productivity gap and being innovative. And we see above average share of higher educated in the public sector, below average share of higher educated in the private service sector, and a below average share of higher educated in the industrial sector, manufacturing sector. Also interesting, and I'm almost finished, sorry, is the management issue, where Denmark is in a international survey about good management practices is falling completely behind countries like United States, Germany, France and Great Britain on having good management practices. So education is one thing, science is not doing well as a driver for innovation in Denmark. We talk about the Danish innovation system as a user-driven innovation system, not a research-driven innovation system. But what we see more and more, both in the center and the periphery, is that there are multiple actors who has a role to play in innovation. And in that way, with user-driven innovation, innovation can become more acceptable and it may be good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindegaard. Now is the turn of Mr. Asko Metinen from Lappeenranta University of Technology, Finland.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The colleague on my left just told me that my slides are not there. So I shortened my presentation and try to concentrate on a few important issues. Let me start by dividing society in three parts, in partes tres in Latin. We have the public sector trying to work for the common benefit, right? Then we have the private sector trying in the first place to work for companies' benefit. Society is there by taking taxes for the common benefit. And then we have the civil society, all the rest, including orphan areas, marginal groups, whatever. And I'm focusing or concentrating on the civil society. But before I move on that, let me give you the ideal role of responsible research and innovation. We have learned that it is, in the first place, a productive factor. So if it works, your nation will flourish. But it should also be a critical factor for further civilization. And that's a big challenge. And here we see the big picture indeed. Responsible research and innovation publicity, mass media, and education. Big, big things. And maybe we could put this also in these words, that we are aiming to improve sustainable well-being of our citizens in Europe or everywhere. And sustainable today seems to include responsible. It's just extending the time perspective. By the way, I'm afraid that Europe is losing its position in global context. Its position is rather weakening than strengthening in the future, I'm afraid. Now, we also have many what we could call social movements or social ideologies or political ideologies, which are actually constituting a field of conflicting values. Let me just mention very briefly a few. Democracy, we are all for democracy. Meritocracy, for example, Singapore is quite close to that extreme. Technocracy, that's China. It used to be the Soviet Union. So a powerful technical elite is in charge and leads the society. By the way, for instance, in the last years of the Soviet Union, it was Brezhnev rule. 90% of the Politburo members were engineers. Of course, there are all kinds of engineers, but I mean the Russian engineers, 80 years and older. Then you had econocracy, so economics in the first place, and I guess China is giving a role model as well today. And then let me, last but not least, say the last social movement, utopia. Utopia. What is utopia? It's an ideally perfect place, especially in social, political, and moral aspects. Sometimes we tend to say that it's an idealistic, impractical scheme for social and political reform. Now, let me remind you, I have two examples here. The Lisbon Agenda, which meant action and development plan devised in the year 2000 for the economy of the European Union between 2000 and 2010. It was aimed to make, and let me cite now, European Union the most competitive and dynamic knowledge-based economy in the world, capable of sustainable economic growth with more and better jobs and greater social cohesion. We are a little bit behind now, aren't we? Now, let me raise, to finish, some current and upcoming challenges in the form of questions. First, what is the relationship between responsible research and innovation and knowledge society? I don't know. It's so complicated. Anyway, we had first information society, and now we rather talk about knowledge society, where we have a major capability to manipulate, store, and transmit large quantities of information cheaply. That's the essence. And today we say that as much as 70 to 80% of economic growth is due to new and better knowledge. So it's a really productive fact. Secondly, are citizens in Europe interested in science and innovations? Yes, they are. We have so-called Eurobarometer about science and technology. They have been carried out 4 times, and every time the result is about the same. Majority of citizens like science as a reliable societal institution. And this has not changed very much over the past 10 years, while at the same time mistrust in political actors, political parties, and the European Union has increased all the time. Sorry about that, but it seems to be fact according to these surveys. We can also say that, down the same issue, that citizens trust in science. And that's a good symptom. Now, a few more questions. How decision-making in a society goes on? Is it based on research, responsible research and innovations? No. Politicians seem to neglect scientific research-based reports and results. They have something else in mind. And it's very frustrating to some expert panels who have worked intensively for a year, for 6 months, and then the politicians say that, this is no good, we don't trust this, so we take another group or panel to work on that, and preferably we should have our own political supporters there. So maybe that's from peripheria, the northern parts of Europe, but we have seen this to happen more and more today. And finally, how we could narrow the gap between research and science experts and ordinary people. We shouldn't forget or underestimate ordinary people. There is a good number of street-smart people who are interested in what scholars and researchers are doing. Now, we need a good number of brokers or mediators, if you like. Universities, science centers, museums, regional environmental centers, research institutes, ecological centers, public libraries, etc., together with schools. They support science education. And what we need in society is better science literacy. It helps. And then we should organize more and more public events, such as we have a good tradition in what we call Studia Generalia. They started them already in the 1920s, and they're very popular. And there are special sessions such as Studia Energica, also a very hot topical issue, etc. So now we need a debate between experts and people, ordinary people whose life are touched. And this happens locally and regionally. The problem is that scholars tend too much to write to each other and don't to make it popular and understandable. Although average people understand much more than the scholars usually expect. Now, we also need social innovations. We have a tendency to appreciate too much technically driven things, but we have people who are aware of some special orphan areas already mentioned here, AIDS people, etc., and these should not be forgotten, and that's why we need strong civil society to bring in all those special things, usually remaining in marginal. And let me, this is my first point, take one concern which I share with my colleague Klaus, but not much with the other colleagues, and that is the role of domestic languages with a view to safeguarding their status as a language of science in the future. So today, it used to be Latin, but today, lingua franca is English. And when I look at my younger colleagues, they can't write anymore, or very poorly, in the native languages. We are bilingual, Finnish and Swedish. But what happens to Dutch and I'm not concerned about Italian or French or Spanish. And for instance, what is rule we use is that publication in the domestic languages are encouraged so that, for example, in each doctoral dissertation there is one-page summary in understandable local language. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mietinen. Now is the turn of questions. Then, if there is any question to the table, please go ahead. Waiting for questions, I will make a question that is, what is the relationship of this gap between responsible research and innovation and the citizens' requirements regarding the marketing function? I don't know if you understand my question, but in fact marketing has to evaluate which are the needs and then to transmit, in my opinion, I don't know, but it's one function that doesn't work so well in the companies, and they make marvelous mistakes. In the case of automotive sector that I know quite well, only in order not to follow exactly which are the aims, they could lose the opportunity of a new car, etc., to sell this new car. Oh, this is the question.
Yeah, if I may, I would say that we discuss very much what is really the need for marketing and advertisement. I think they have failed to have a legitimate role in the future innovation economy, to be a little provocative maybe, but what we see is a paradigm shift from selling what is produced to produce what sells. And that is why you need to take the user on board in the creation process, in the innovation process already at the idea stage. What are really the needs we want to meet if we want to do something new or better? And it will give a much higher success that you actually can sell your things. You don't just keep on doing and producing what you always do, and then you buy some a service to help you persuade somebody that they really need what you produce, if you can see the difference.
Yeah, in order to go further, if we do consider the case of Renault, when they have a disconnection between marketing, human resources, management, and international trade, it just finished with 26 engineers committing suicide in Paris. So by the end, what had happened? We need innovation, but at the same time we need ethics regarding people at work. And time to time, when we are focused only on publicity, advertising, and new products, I don't think we are on the right way. And we need to consider people, profit, planet, and progress. Which kind of progress could we have? Otherwise, it's really silly. And Carlos Ghosn, I think, was on the wrong way during many years. He is getting better. So that's a good thing. We are still in progress.
Well, I have some background in marketing and diffusion of innovation is an interesting area. And you might recall the groups, different groups, such as early adapters, technology freaks, for example, majority late adapters, and so-called laggards, who are very, very much behind. And a good example from our country today, may be valid also elsewhere in Europe, is older ladies and e-banking, for example. Because the life expectancy of ladies is 85 years in Finland, and for males only 78 years. Now, there are very popular courses called Third Age University, where almost all are 75 plus, so they can indicate that I understand nothing. But they are eager to learn, and they learn these things. But it would be quite uneasy to have somebody 15 years old who does it very quickly, and the older one is not getting up. But this Third Age University movement is very strong in the country at the moment. And it's a good example how civil society makes some good things. It's usually a part of open university system, but very popular.
Thank you.
Yes, very quickly, because you can summarize at the end. When we speak of marketing, we have at least 3 aspects of marketing. 2 are good and 1 is bad. Understanding and forecasting. That's good. Otherwise, so it's market search, essentially. Understanding and forecasting what the needs are. Totally positive. Do not give up to this. Information diffusion is also very positive, because you may be the inventor or a producer of a fantastic product, service, but nobody knows it. So this is also positive. What is negative? The pressure to make, to obtain economic profitability where the market would not be prepared or ready to accept your product or service.
Thank you very much. Is there any, please?
Once again, I have perceived a certain confusion between research, development, innovation. Beginning by Mr. Fordona that said innovation is novelty. For me, I am an engineer, different from most of you. Innovation is not novelty. A novelty can be an innovation, but an innovation and not always. The success in the market is a need. So research and development have a completely different problems and need a completely different skills than innovation. I have worked a lot of years I understood that was innovation. For me, innovation is to put on the market with commercial success one product and service, or into the factory one process with success. The rest I don't understand. Research and innovation I have never worked. But in all the meetings or conferences like that, I find this confusion between the 3 concepts, more and more complex each time. For instance, 30 years ago, 40 years ago was research and development. That's all. After research, development, and innovation. That is clear. Now is responsible research, development, and innovation. Well, good. Responsible research, development, innovation for innovation. I think that in our world, when we don't understand a simple concept, we complicate more and more the definition and make the processes more and more complicated. Because most of these ideas are 20 years old, and for the moment are not innovations still. On the other hand, speaking of ethics, what do you think about Mr. Darwin? Was ethic his evolution theory at the time? That's all. Thank you.
My goodness. Regarding your first point, I fully agree. I accept all the criticism. Actually, when I said that, I mean, and this is because innovation is not just creating something new, but putting it into the market. That those conflicts between what is scientifically possible, feasible, economically efficient, and ethically acceptable is when you have conflicts between these three. Because when you have something that you want to put into the market, then you find the conflict between science, market, economy, and ethics. No? So I fully agree. Maybe I was not correct in the definition, but I think that the idea was there. No? Regarding Darwin, we can meet for another table probably to discuss about evolution. As far as I know, and I don't know too much about Darwin. No? I think that the evolution, as all the theories, let's put it this way, all the theories have a part that is clearly true, and sometimes part that is not true. No? And the problem with all the scientific theories is when you want to generalize from this scientific theory that maybe works in one part of the reality, and you want to generalize for all the world. No? So that the real world, the material world, the living beings, there is a kind of evolution that is fully acceptable, I think. When you want to generalize and make all the reality and all even the human species and everything try to understand by the evolution theory, I think that this generalization creates some conflicts. So in some specific levels, I think that was something good. And following all the steps of the scientific method, when you want to generalize from science to philosophy, maybe you are becoming wrong. But, I mean, it's just in 1 minute to summarize and criticize Darwin is too much for me, no? As you might understand. So.
I don't judge Darwin, Darwin theory. I say that according to this approach, your approach, Darwin never had to issue this theory because ethically was not correct at the time.
Another question there, please.
I wanted to emphasize the fact of business opportunity and relate the business opportunity with responsible innovation. There is a lot of opportunities. For us engineers, we are looking for business, for making money. There are examples that because people is very keen nowadays with environment, just to create products in line with environment. And on top, if the consumer can have the advantage, economical advantage from these new products, even better. I was reading the other day a couple of examples. A detergent for Philippines with problems of water. If they have developed a detergent with a single rinsing, you have to use less water. If you, and fully agree with the definition of marketing, you send the message to people, it's a double advantage. In the South America, another detergent problem, using too much energy. And you market and you advise that you can produce a detergent that can laundry at cool temperature. All this is increasing volumes, increasing business, in line with research innovation. I just wanted to emphasize this fact.
Any comment from the table? You agree on this question then?
Yes.
Okay. Any other question?
The example of Stanford or MIT in which the companies collaborate with the universities and research centers. Isn't that a clear example of responsible research and innovation for the development of products taken to the market and helping each other, universities and companies, in their own specialities? What do you think about that?
No. No, because it's not the organizational aspects which are prevalent on the ethical aspects. Firms and universities may collaborate for bad purposes. I mean, with the exploitation of the environment in a non-ethical way, in a non-responsible perspective. I said there was a definition somewhere in some of the presentation where it said that cultural and there is a gap between culture and science. It's true, because very often we do not internalize what is culturally acceptable. Culturally means also politically, which is the big issue that probably was raised implicitly in the early intervention. Because it's true that in Latin America or in Europe or in China, what is acceptable or yes, accepted by the society is different. Look at the questions of the pollution and of the environment in China and in Western Europe. We accept that Chinese products are less expensive. We accept that okay. We have to accept that their competition is higher, and we judge this from the economic point of view as valuable. And on the same time, we accept that the pollution in developing countries, and I include China within these, is something which cannot be afforded because there are other priorities for the growth of and the maintenance of 1 billion and something people. So in a way, what should be responsible from the point of view of the research, innovation as application of the research and production changes in time and in space. There cannot be an ideological point of view or a principle which is good for everybody. That's a responsibility too. That is responsibility. The fact that we are dealing with the best conditions that are available today in Spain, in Europe, in Denmark, in Finland, which are not the same conditions as in Vietnam. And of course we should converge towards this, let's say, some standards. And this international institutions are main actors in this convergence, in this agreement. But there is no absolutism to be used and pursued in these activities.
You would like to add?
Yes. If I can, I think also it's a very difficult relation because with two examples from Denmark. One thing was in the when the whole wind turbine industry started in Denmark. It was small experimenting pioneers who try to construct out of some kind of green vision, construct these mills, but they didn't know how they operate or how good they were. And here a technical university and engineers engaged in their to use for free their research time in trying to make standards of how to measure performance of mills and turbine blades and things like that, and in that way pushed or helped the whole industry develop. I think it's a good example of research engaging for the benefit of society when somebody comes and knocks at their door. We have another example with, we have a big chewing gum manufacturer in Denmark, and they sponsored or they gave a grant to another university, not my university either, in Denmark, to investigate if sugar-free chewing gum wasn't healthy for the teeth and hygienic for the mouth, so you don't have to brush your teeth, you can just have chewing gum instead. And the researchers, they took the job and they investigated, and they came up with the conclusion that it could not be proven any positive effect like the company hoped for. And then the company, they put a ban that the researchers could not publish this result. So they have to shut up about this knowledge. So. It can be many ways.
We cannot answer yes or no, but we need to answer. So we need to say just it depends on the context. And especially regarding MIT, we need to put together innovators and entrepreneurs. If we do have only innovators on one side, it doesn't work, because they are thinking only on personal life. Entrepreneurs, they think on professional life. We need to put them together in order really to advance and to sustain global community. And time to time, even in MIT, they are far away from reality. It's a pity, but it's a good case. It's the best practices on Earth. But you could see exactly the same in Sao Paulo with USP or in Kansai in Japan. It's not only in MIT. We do have other universities where they have strong links with companies.
Well, I guess that we should add the American mindset. It's very business-driven. Money talks, really. And innovation is also risky business. It's about uncertainty. And they lose much also. And maybe 10% of venture capitalist investments really pay off. But this is partly a joke, what I learned. I happened to attend the first course in business ethics at Harvard Business School, 1977. So it was together with the Divinity School and a pioneering group. Today it's compulsory, by the way. And one of the old clergymen there reminded about a poem saying that it talks about Mr. Business, who was a very religional man. It goes like this: Mr. Business went to Mass. He never missed a Sunday. Mr. Business went to hell for what he did on Monday.
Okay.
Just a small thing. I think the point is this one, no, that the interest of the so we have what needs to be the point that unites all the parts in the collaboration is a common goal. If the common goal is the search for truth, so to say, then science will prevail. The problem is that since the different parts have different interests and those interests are not the same, there is the conflict between which one is going to prevail, no? If the search for truth or the economic interest or other interests, no? So Monday and Sunday.
Okay. Thank you. The last question, because it's 8 o'clock and we have to finish.
Yes, this question is Professor Mittinen. It's with a little bit uneasy that I've listened your words of the interference of the politicians in these things, you know. because there is a precedent who has been in the last 30, 40 years the interference of the politicians in something where we see the result, which is the cultural world, you know. In fact, there is a professor of the Sorbonne, Mr. Fumaroli, who has made a very good book about how the destruction practically of a highly cultural country like France through the interference of the state. So because probably the science is something that they didn't want to interfere or they understood less, maybe the tsunami has not reached yet the cultural world, you know, the scientific world, you know. And maybe that is going to create maybe a lot more, maybe destruction than help, you know, considering the extrapolation, the empirical extrapolation of the result of other areas of interference. So that's, if you can enlarge really what is your feeling about, because that is in Europe, because we have a system in which the state collects the money and then distributes to the scientific, where it's different of the American system where you invest directly and after you deduct from your taxing. This is not a minor question, you know, because it means an intermediate. You were talking about the actors, and maybe this actor has not been mentioned in his dimension in Europe, no?
Yeah, thank you for your comment. I was not quite accurate. It's so easy to blame the politicians. They have a very demanding task in balancing different views, etc. But what is new over the past 10, 15 years is that politicians and civil servants and business executives as well are more easily exposed to public criticism. And that's what we see every day. And it's sometimes very aggressive and even hurting. And this is due to the new social media, etc. So it's terrible, terrible, and when you take a look how people are saying about politicians. So anyway, they are working or trying to work for the common benefit, and let's appreciate their uneasy work.
Okay, then in order to finish this roundtable, I kindly ask Mr. Ferran Tarradellas, that is the director of the Agency of European Commission, here to go to the table, please.
Yes, thank you very much to the organizers of this event, and thank you to the professor of IESE to give me his seat, which is already pre-warmed before I can hear, which is always pleasant. I think it will be ethical for me as well not to make a long speech at this time of the day. I had prepared, I can show it to you, a wonderful 12-page speech about Euro 2020 and the research policy of the European Union. But after listening to the speakers in this table, I thought it would be a pity to stop talking about ethics and research, which is the subject of this table. And I was very much motivated by the speakers, but also by the questions on the room. So I just would like to make a few considerations on the issue of ethics and research policy. And it's been said in this table by Professor Metin and particularly by others that the role of public institutions and the politicians that lead these public institutions is look for the common good, yeah? In a way to counterbalance the role of the market, which is good, is looking for the maximization of benefits of the companies that people are working in or creating. It's interesting because the role of the public authorities is normally much less efficient than the role of the market. Market is much more efficient providing goods and services that the politicians are. So policies basically try to correct what market is doing better in a way. But I think it's important that there is this role, that there is a policy that corrects that, because maximization of benefits is based very much on Darwinian laws. I like very much the question on Darwin, because market is about the survival of the stronger and the selection of species. If you are better than the other, you're going to survive, otherwise the other is going to eat you. And there are big fishes and small fishes. Big fishes tend to eat the small fishes. And the problem is that there are some fishes that are left on the way, and this is where the policy comes in. Because one of the roles of politicians and one of the roles of politics, it's about distributive justice. In a perfect market, there is equality of opportunities for everybody. But there is no perfect market. We have seen it recently. We are in the crisis, an economic crisis which is the result of a monumental failure of the market. And it's good that there is someone that distributes the goods for people that come at certain point and are unable to profit the opportunities of the market, maybe because maybe they are not intelligent enough, or maybe because they are handicapped, or maybe because they are old, or maybe because they have not had the luck, or maybe because they come from a social background that didn't give them the opportunity of someone coming from a higher class. And I think it's important that there is a public service defending the common good. And this comes to ethics as well, because the public service has also its ethical obligations to respect. We have to look for the common good, and sometimes citizens have the impression that institutions are looking for the good of the institution and not for the common good. And in terms of research policy in the European Union, which is the common good that we are looking for this, with this Horizon 2020? Why did we put so much effort in developing a research policy that has so much money now compared with previous framework programs, research framework programs that were dominating policy? Because what society is asking for us now is to come out of this economic crisis. I think this is priority number one. It's not priority number one because we would like to come back to growth. It's priority number one because there are millions, more than 26 million of people unemployed in the European Union. And this is, as Professor von Rodona was saying, it's not just a figure. It's 26 million of tragedies of human persons suffering that we have to help. And we have discovered that countries that invest more in research are more resilient to economic crisis and are able to come out of the economic crisis better than countries that do not make this investment. And this is why we think that since getting out of the crisis is our priority, we have to put a lot of effort in this counter-cyclical policy, which is research. And this is a little bit what it's everything behind. And since the market is far more efficient than the public sector, we want to help the market to reach this goal. And this is why there is so much effort from going to science to development, but particularly from development to innovation, because we don't want to have our fantastic researchers discovering a new boson of Higgs, which probably is a wonderful discovery, but it's not helping these 26 million people that are unemployed, which is our priority. Of course, it doesn't mean that we have to focus only on that, because on the way that we are trying to get out of the crisis, we can solve other problems, problems of environmental nature, for instance, climate change, for instance, our energy dependency, with wind mills, for instance, or wind generators. Or we can also address some social problems, like certain illnesses that don't have a medical answer, or the problem of aging population, that is very important to have an answer to people that are going to live longer, as Professor Mettinen was mentioning before, and which also is having a huge impact on our budgets. And we have to do that ethically, and that means introducing the common general ethical values in that, and that means the famous "you should not steal, you shall not kill, you shall not lie, you shall not wish the evil of someone else." I mean, the classical Ten Commandments that we all learn in the school and that I think it will be good to revive, but other values that have been coming recently, like for instance animal welfare. The Commission has adopted a legislation recently that forbids animal welfare for cosmetic research. We consider that being beautiful should not be done at the expense of torture an animal, which means that Europeans are going to be probably among the ugliest of the world in the future, but at least our animals are going to be well treated. Or gender equality. We failed to mention that, but it's true that in the research world, I mean, I'm a bit ashamed that in this very table we are just 6 men, not very beautiful men at that, I have to say. But there are no women researchers. We are from the continent of Marie Curie. And I think women have to have also an opportunity on making this research. So I just would like to mention these few things. Our policy, our research policy is done with your money, with taxpayers' money. We have to look for the common good. So I think it's good that we take this money from the production sector, let's say, from the market. But I would like to assure you that we count very much on the market, and in the market Darwinian laws to get this maximum value out of this money that at the end of the day belongs to you and which is devoted, as I was saying at the beginning, to the common good. 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to this session, and we foresee to make another session similar to this in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you.
How long summary is expected? 1 page? Summary.